Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance Sexton, excuse me, Delaney Sexton in the house. Lance, you look tanned and rested. Welcome back.
Well, Bob, I got lost on Monday because no CRL on Monday. I was working along. I was getting ready to log in, and I called Delaney on the phone. I'm like, we're not having a show today, right?
Where's everyone?
Where'd they go?
Everyone had a nice 3-day weekend. Their certificate, we got a lot of news. Let's get into it. Number one, the demand for small business loans in 2022, mid-2022. Today is what? What is the demand as of June 24th, 2022?
And Bob, I did see the script, so I'm going to be easy on this.
Well, let's let Delaney do her reporting first. Delaney, what did you find out?
Well, the majority is correct. The demand for small business loans has decreased.
But
Lance, now your turn, Lance. Why is that? Talk about
I think there's a variety of factors involved. One, when you consider the fact that trillions of dollars went into small business hands via PPP, via EIDL, via no-fee SBA 7A loans, via SBA 504 refis. I mean, SBA lending in 2021 was pretty substantial. Plus, there was a lot of money provided to small businesses through various disaster, via PPP and EIDL. So I think that has an impact. But I think the other impact, Delaney was talking about this before we started the show, was the increase in interest rates. I think a lot of borrowers have stepped over to the sidelines and say, we're going to see what happens with interest rates. Now, Bob, you and I have been around for a while. We have seen interest rates much higher than what we're talking about. I don't think we're going to see interest rate reduction for a few years. In fact, I think we'll see rates continue to trickle up.
Lance, would you say there's a correlation between what's happening in the home mortgage refinance business and small business lending, i.e. loan mortgages have dried up? People most of them got on the bandwagon and they did it. And now the poor mortgage brokers, real estate mortgage brokers I talk to, they're in bad shape. Do you think that also applies to our borrowers, that they saw this and jumped on the bandwagon early?
I think it does across the board, because in underwriting and approving an SBA loan, we're trying to meet a particular debt service coverage ratio. And when you have increased ratio, it's just like first-time homeowners. I had this discussion with somebody the other day, and Bob, a first-time homeowner in Los Angeles is a very different discussion than a first-time homeowner in Arkansas. But a first-time homeowner's purchase in Arkansas is probably $150,000 to $200,000 house. $150,000 house with a normal down payment might have $700 a month payment.
Cindy, we're moving to Arkansas. Pack up.
So, but the point being, Bob, a newly minted graduate from a university who's married, 2 spouses make $40,000. They can afford a $700 a month payment. That same house today, with interest rates that are double what they were a year ago, suddenly becomes $1,000 a month. So you lose a lot of potential home buyers, a lot of people who may potentially refinance their homes. The same thing happens in small businesses. A project that may have cash flowed at 5.5%, 6% might not cash flow at 7.5%. So,
Lance, that's a great analogy, and also taking it further, now that $300 is not available to spend into the economy. It isn't spent on Main Street. It's not spent for restaurants and books and entertainment.
Well, Bob, I had a discussion with quite a few people. I did a little presentation yesterday about eligibility, and we were talking about debt service coverage, and there were a lot of borrowers on this call. And my discussion was, for 10 years, financial institutions didn't have to worry about rate shock, didn't have to worry about what if. Interest rates stayed the same for so long. now not only as a SBA lender do we have to take a look at the current rate, which is 1.75% higher than it was this time a year ago, but we have to take into consideration the potential rate increases that the Fed's talking about in the future.
Go ahead, Joseph. I'm sure this is.
Sorry. Bob, I was bragging on myself for being on script, and then I got completely off.
Well, any movement in the script area is great. Yeah, and I think that's very, very astute. And actually, I have no issue with the 3%. That could be a very interesting conversation we can have for another day.
Well,
Delaney,
Bob,
what other information did you? Does NFIB say that you found fascinating or interesting to our lenders?
Well, 65% of small business owners are not interested in a loan. And a lot of regular borrowers, which the NFIB qualifies regular borrowers as those who borrow every 3 months, are decreasing as of May. In addition, the average interest rate is 5.7%, which is the highest since early 2020, given it was higher in 2019. But I do think there's a correlation between these interest rates and, of course, like you were discussing earlier, the high amount of loans that went out previously in the pandemic.
Okay. Very good. Lance, Joseph, let's jump ahead to Paul's question. It's a technical question. I want Lance to weigh in on this. And the question is, he goes to SAM.gov and he doesn't see a record. Does that mean it's clear, or is he doing something wrong?
That's a tough one because we are supposed to run the SAM's reports on borrowers, guarantors, the business. And if there's not, it's kind of like CAVERS, Bob. Sometimes you'll get a CAVERS clearance, and when you get to the time for guaranteed purchase, SBA will be saying, well, wait a second. They defaulted on an SBA loan, but you ran your CAVERS report and it's clear. Paul, and I appreciate the question, Paul. Always love reading your post on LinkedIn and everything. But if you run a SAM report and nothing comes back, I'm going to take that as a clear.
Yes, you're right.
But Paul, please put evidence of the nothing comes back in your file. And the reason for that is the same thing that I discussed with CAVERS, Bob. I've ran a CAVERS clearance before and got an A, which says you can move forward. And then the loan defaults 2 or 3 years, and then SBA saying, hey, wait a second, they defaulted on a, FHA loan 6 years ago. And I'm like, I did what I was supposed to do.
Right. What we do for our confidential reports is we do a screenshot. It says no search results, and it shows what you put in there. So you put in Lance Sexton, it says no returns, but you can see where it says his. So just do a screenshot of that. You have that, and you have the date. So that's how that works.
Hey, Bob, and I'll do this quickly, back to the rising rate environment. I had a conversation with somebody I wrote a business plan for in the 80s. I did an SBA loan for him in the late 80s, did another SBA loan for him in the 90s, and one in the early 2000s. And we were talking about a rising rate environment. He said, Lance, that first loan you did for me was at 15.9%.
Yeah.
And
here's the exception. I think that's a good point. You need to educate your borrowers that these are interest-adjusted loans, and they may be in for a shock. All right, let's talk about Fraud Friday. What do we have, Delaney?
So first off, Mr. Budamala, I believe.
I think that's good.
Thank you. He applied for, I believe, 7 idle and PPP loans, claiming his businesses had dozens of employees, made millions of dollars in revenue, and that he needed the money for payroll and business expenses. He managed to obtain over $5 million, but of course, as many of these go, he did not actually spend this on payroll or any other sorts of things. He ended up buying a $1.2 million investment property in Eagle Rock, an almost $600,000 property in Malibu, a personal residence worth $1 million.
Time out. You cannot buy a $600,000 property in
Bob,
Malibu. I'm just
Bob,
saying.
is that a-
What's wrong with your reporting, Delaney?
Is that a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 150 square foot Malibu
Maybe it's an
estate?
RV you park on the street. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
He's put about $1 million into an investment visa program, and then $3 million went into his own personal banking account.
Well, that's prudent, and I assume that is now gone.
Yeah, the
government
the
has.
$4 million, the $4 million, guys, got swiped, I'm sure, by FBI or Homeland Security or SBA, somebody.
Yeah. Well, this is probably the most prudent con artist we have, is that he bought some real estate and put the rest in the bank thinking he can get away with it. He obviously did not think about plan B, which is he is not the smartest person in the room, and they came knocking on his door. What's going on with the post office?
Oh,
Yes, so 6 different employees, both current and former, though I imagine they will not be current for too long, got in trouble, or they are charged for both PPP fraud and for unemployment fraud. They applied for unemployment benefits while they were working for the U.S. Postal Service. And I don't think it actually told me
They
how
were working
many.
and they filed. That's good. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I don't think it told me how many loans they applied for. I know it was quite a few, and among all of them, they got 65 counts: theft by deception, state benefits fraud, loan fraud, wire fraud, and forgery.
Now, were these 6 working in connection or cahoots with each other?
I'm not 1,000% sure. I know 2 of them were married, so I know at least those 2.
The answer to that is yes. Okay.
yeah, who better to steal identity than postal employees?
That's scary stuff. That's scary stuff. Yeah. Got an interesting email about someone who's saying that there's lenders out there who are committing fraud and whatever. And just an open comment on that. If you have that, it's interesting to us. I can't do anything with that. Just refer, if you have inside knowledge or you are that, just go directly to the Inspector General. Obviously,
Yeah,
if we have facts, we'll report them, but I can't report on a rumor. Go ahead, Lance.
You make an excellent point, Bob. In my daily life, working PPP, liquidation and forgiveness, I will get phone calls from people who say, so-and-so got a PPP loan, they never owned a business, they went out and, had a big party, but they'll come up with a story, and I'm like, I need factual evidence, and they say, well, I don't have facts, I don't have pictures, I don't have bank statements. And, the best thing to do when somebody's telling you a story about somebody who may have potentially committed fraud on an SBA loan program is exactly what Bob said. Send them to the SBA Inspector General.
Something good. Hey, Lance, we did a study, we did a report, and it came back as this. The business had one PPP loan that says is forgiven from the same lender, and then the second loan is outstanding. How does that work? And they were for the same amount. We're talking small amounts, $40,000, $50,000. Go ahead.
There's some confusing areas of PPP forgiveness and liquidation. This is one of the, and I hope I'm reading this right. For some reason, SBA would allow multiple first draw PPP loans to be approved. Like Bank XYZ did a PPP loan on April the 1st, and Bank M did a PPP loan on April the 2nd, and they were both first draw loans. And sadly enough, in the forgiveness portal, it's who gets there first. And I know that I first of all, having 2 first draw loans, it seems like SBA would have had safeguards to keep that from happening. I don't understand how 2 first draw loans, but it occurs, and it's occurred over and over.
And I don't know. This one, it's the same institution.
So reread that question so I understand.
No, it's not a question. It's a case. We have a situation where a borrower had call it a $40,000 PPP loan that was forgiven. Then they have another $40,000 loan to the same lender, PPP loan that is, there's no status on it. It's not forgiven.
Well, first of all, you need to reach out to the borrower and encourage them to apply for forgiveness. If the borrower does not, when that loan gets out of its deferment period, send them a loan statement requesting payment, then send them a second statement requesting payment. If they don't respond, send them a demand letter and then do a guarantee purchase.
Right. There you go. Very good. Let's see. Any other fraud stories that you have, Delaney, for us?
Sorry, my computer's giving me a hard time. Yes, I do.
All right.
This group of 8 people, together they committed some fraud. They would use fake documents, fake bank statements, other sorts of things to apply for PPP loans. And interestingly enough, I believe one of them wrote a script for all of the other people so that whenever they spoke with lenders, they had their story straight. Together, they managed to obtain $7 million in PPP EIDL. And interestingly enough, in the DOJ press release, they said SBA loans. So I assume they might have applied for some other SBA loans in addition. And Bob, I know this is your favorite part. Some of the money was used for the stock market. Someone paid off their home mortgage and luxury vacations. And I quote, a fleet of used vehicles.
Used. Well, we don't know what they are. Very good. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, I was just going to say one of the things that I've heard stories that have some similarity, but during PPP, there apparently were groups of people who would call people and say, "Hey, I can get you some money," and
Yes.
they would collect their information, social security number, phone number, and address, and they would input that into a PPP loan platform. And then when it got to the point of where the money was going to go, the bank account, of course, obviously it went to their, the fraudster's bank account. And then the PPP lender gets a call from the individual who looks up on ProPublica and figures out they supposedly had a PPP loan and knew nothing about it. And then you make a phone call and you talk to the individual and you're like, "You got a PPP loan out there." They're like, "I don't know anything about it." I'm like, "Well, did anybody ever talk to you about one?" They're like, "Yeah." "Well, did you get personal information?" "Yeah. And I was supposed to get some money and I was going to get part of the money." And I have a hard time feeling sorry for somebody that would give all their their personal information to somebody with the expectation of fraudulently receiving money and then giving part of it back.
I hear you. Lance, what are you doing next Wednesday?
Real excited, Bob. It's a new offering. We're going to talk about insurance coverages required on SBA loans and offer up some thoughts on the type of coverage, what you need in your SBA loan file. We're also, Bob, going to talk about that pesky little topic, historic properties, and what you're supposed to do to make sure that you cover yourself as an SBA lender on historic properties. So again, I'm pretty excited. We're doing some new topics for you, and I would encourage people who are doing SBA lending. It's a good program to kind of keep you updated on insurance information that's needed on an SBA loan.
Well, thank you very much, Lance and Delaney. Thank you. We'll see you on Monday. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great weekend.
Have a nice weekend.